Hi, I'm CJ Peterson, and welcome to The Journey is Real. We talk to real people with real passions who share a real portion of their hearts. Today, we're doing another special episode, and my guest today is Ben Jacoby, and we titled his podcast, Extreme Sports and Entrepreneurship. What's the connection? Thanks for coming on today, Ben.
Thank you very much for having me, CJ.
You've had quite a journey. The journey is real. The journey is just as important as the passion. We'll get to the passion in just a second. Can you take us back as far as you need to and bring us forward on your journey so far?
So I'd say my journey through adulthood started pretty much in 2009, where I enlisted to the IDF, the Israeli military. That is sort of where I began shaping myself as an adult. And serving in the military for almost 4 years gave me very interesting perspective to life. Right after that, I traveled throughout Southeast Asia for about
Let's
6 months.
back up a second. What was the interesting perspective that you said? You said it gave you
Oh,
interesting perspective to life. What kind of go a little deeper for us?
well, I think serving in the military, especially in the Israeli military, where it's mandatory, and we call it the nation's military, the nation's army versus um, something that belongs to the country because it's part of all of us. And I think the perspective it gave me is at a very young age, I felt the what holding a weapon can do
Mhm.
and what type of power it gives an individual. And also, it at a very young age, it gave me the um, feeling on how it is to serve your country
Mhm.
and not get anything in return. I think when you do that at a younger age, it kind of sets you off to adulthood in a non-selfish way because you're already, you know, instead of going and developing yourself for 3 years, you go and you protect your country. And I think that it's in one way or another volunteer work. So
But
it's
it's something that's bigger than you, and that's, I think, kind of the key behind that is that
yeah, definitely.
it's not about you, it's about the unit, it's about the military, it's about your country. So it's something bigger than you and gives you a
Right.
bigger view than just your little world bubble.
Right. And especially in combat, they teach you at the beginning, it's about, knowing how to, protect yourself and engage with others. But then it's part of your group and engage with other groups, and part of your class and engage with other classes, and your department with other departments, all the way up to battalions and squadrons with others. So it's really about cooperating with others and not, expanding those circles.
Hmm. Okay, you can go on forward.
Great. So, 2012 was when I set off on my journey to Southeast Asia.
Hmm.
I got to backpack through maybe 7 or 8 countries, some by boat, some by train, some by plane, some by foot, some by bus. And
What
I
was
think
that?
that,
What was that like for you? My husband did that when he graduated high school. He did that. He was actually born in South Africa, and then they immigrated to the U.S. And so when his senior year came, he went back to South Africa, but then he went forward and did this huge backpacking thing through Europe. So what was that like for you?
so I actually, I wasn't planning on going for that long. My original plan was going for maybe a month or two. Uh, my brother and father were planning a meeting in Indonesia. So I said, well, if I'm already leaving the country, I was supposed to fly to the United States. Back at the time, I was living in Israel.
Mhm.
And then I said, well, maybe I'll join you guys in Indonesia on my way to the States. And with no responsibility, and, kind of, the spirit that's out there, you get carried from one thing to another. And when you see those adventures at the grasp of your hand, then you just go for them. So
Now, like
that's
I said,
what
what was it
happened.
like going from culture to culture? Because each culture is unique in and of itself. And so as you're going from country to country, you're actually changing over cultures and relearning each new culture and getting to know the people in there. What is that like?
Right. So I say, uh, if you cross countries by foot or by train, and they're one next to each other, you could feel in what the culture that you've entered is similar to the previous one. and then it's kind of like it's you go from one step to another. I think the biggest changes are is if you fly somewhere else, and that's where you really see who you are, because that's the only thing that's similar from the previous place you've been to the place you've arrived to.
Hmm. Definitely. So what was next on your list?
Next was after Southeast Asia, I somehow, very long story, ended up in the Shaolin Temple in
Okay,
China.
you're going to have to shorten that one because I got to know how you did that.
um, I actually I met some random guy on a bus, and we started talking for 8 hours, and one thing led to another, and he was telling me that he's been traveling for 10 years, and he lives off of a backpack that is pretty much the size of a briefcase.
Wow.
And one of his stories was that he spent a year and a half studying Tai Chi in some monastery in China. So I didn't know exactly how or what I'm going to do. But I started asking people around. I bumped into someone in the street. I asked her, "Are you Chinese?" She said, "Yes." I asked for recommendation. She had nothing. I bumped into her the next day. She gave me a piece of paper. She told me, "Shaolin Temple, you have to go there." I didn't know anything about it. And I said, "Okay." I started researching. I saw that the Shaolin Temple is the real deal. I've never practiced Kung Fu before, but it seemed like the type of experience I'd like to have.
Uh-huh.
And it was just, to hassle my way to get into there, getting it approved, getting the letters, getting the travel arrangements, accommodation, training. So
Interesting.
that was a journey of itself. And once I arrived over there, I was there for almost a full month.
Hmm.
I trained with a few different masters or shifus, like you'd say in uh, Chinese, Mandarin. And I had a great experience. I had a lot of tough moments where I felt very lonely because no one spoke English and no one really knew Western culture. And I
But
was training
see,
really
on,
hard.
on the flip side, it kind of gave you a lot of time that you didn't have when you went to the military to figure out who you were as you were going through this unique change, though, correct?
Right. Well, luckily, I was very ripe when it came to traveling, and I was already used to communicating with body gestures and body language, and not necessarily speaking to someone in my mother tongue wasn't the issue. I'd say for the most part that it was just that no one was familiar with anything that we are on a day-to-day basis. And as silly as it sounds, there's, for instance, no Coca-Cola, or the car brands are different. So
Hmm.
there's absolutely nothing that ties you. You feel like you're in some sort of other planet. And I found that a little bit harder because you want to identify with someone.
Hmm.
And I'm sure that one of the toughest things about living in a deserted island is that you can't identify with anything. And maybe I felt somewhat like that when I was um, in this temple.
And how long were you there for?
I think it was 3.5 weeks.
Hmm. Neat. So what was next?
So then I flew over from there. I flew to Hawaii. Suddenly everyone was talking English, and I was like,
They're
wow.
a little surreal. Talk
Yeah,
to
and
me
actually
again. Talk to me again.
I didn't have a good time in Hawaii. I
No?
was sick of it. No, I came after 6 months of traveling. I saw the most beautiful beaches in the world in Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand. I didn't need another tropical island. I just wanted to go meet my family and friends in the States.
Hmm.
That's when I made my way over to LA. I was supposed to be there for six months just to, work a little bit, earn some extra cash. And that's the first time I went to Burning Man was in 2012. And
So
the first
for
time I
those
went,
who are listening, what is the Burning Man?
so Burning Man is basically it's a for say arts festival. It takes place in Black Rock City, Nevada. Is in the last weekend of August, and that's pretty much where you could see anything from everything. It's where any subculture could feel like they could express themselves to the fullest extent. So it is an experiment experimental community where there's a city that's built for a week, and everyone brings their own resources, and then whatever needs to be disposed they would take care of it themselves. And the production itself makes sure that the whole chaos is in place, but for the most part it's the participants who bring everything to the table.
Neat. So, and how many of those have you gone to?
So I've actually been, I think it was 9.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, there was 9 of them, and no, sorry, yeah, I guess it was 9 of them since, and I really found, as as odd as it sounds, to find home in a place that is only temporary, but I just think that going back every year and recreating what I've built and the relationships and the traditions, and especially the people that would come with me, a lot of friends from home, a lot of times my closest family, my siblings,
Hmm.
and just spend those 10 days building our camp, building our home, and just living there and taking part of the activities for those full 10 days.
That's pretty cool. So, how did you end up in from going from there to Australia in a van?
So my best friend from the military, his name is Yoav. Him and I kept in touch, throughout the years. And 2014, both me and him, he was back in Israel, and we just had both this, there's just some energy about, something has to happen. We have to go out and do something.
Hmm.
And we were both very adventurous, and we kind of got, into our own thing. And we didn't know exactly what we wanted to do or how we wanted to do something significant. And then the idea of going to Australia came because Australia is just, it's a huge country with a lot of options, and it's rather westernized, so it's easy to get around
Hmm.
and communicate. And we knew that we wanted to do something bigger and not just have fun between hostel to hostel. And that's when we decided. We didn't know exactly what we're going to do. We didn't know if we're going to do something for the community or voluntary. But when we a few weeks before we arrived, we kind of started understanding that what we wanted to do is buy a bus. So we found a bus, we bought a bus, we ordered a lot of DJ equipment and lights, and we painted the bus half pink, half green, and we called it the Platy Bus. Which, by the way, if you go on Facebook or Instagram, you can find our accounts from back at the time. And the Platybus, we weren't very active on social media. It wasn't as big back then, but
Hmm.
the Platybus became a traveling community. We learned how to DJ, and we would do pop-up parties. We printed out stickers, and everywhere
That's
we would go,
fun.
yeah, everywhere we would go, we would let people know if it's night markets, if it's hostels. We let travelers and locals know that we're coming over there, and we would set up a pop-up party in a parking lot and invite everyone to come join us.
So,
And
how did you pay for that? Because that sounds pretty expensive.
so for the most part, I still had my business, going back to 2012 when I started working in the United States. I opened up my first business. I started subcontracting as a locksmith. And then one thing led to another, and I, kind of need more help. So I hired my first employee, my second employee, my third employee. And at some point, the operation was big enough for me to just oversee it from far away, to the point where I had one of my employees manage it directly. And I was pretty much just the owner. And so I had some income coming from there.
Hmm.
Now, um, my friend also had his sources of income from back from where he was in Israel, and our our expenses were, for the most part, it was this bus, and then it was getting around everywhere, and the
So pretty much
the
everybody else brought the party with them.
yeah,
You
they
just
would,
supplied
bring
the
their own
music and the
drinks and
lights and
contribute. And yeah. So at some point we decided that, wow, we have something really big going on over here. So I sent out emails to many festivals, and I told in Australia and told them, hey, we don't want anything. We just want to open a renegade stage at your festival. And we got really good responses, and people were um there's like, yeah, come over and join. And I think in Australia that's what's possible, because it's not, the law, I don't think, is as tight and strict as it is here in the States, and people are not as afraid of of something going wrong.
Mhm.
So that was great.
So then what happened after that? Where'd you head to? Because you've had so many adventures so far that we've talked about. There's so
Right.
much
So
epic.
actually, in Australia, unfortunately, we were involved in a kind of a serious accident, and on my blog and my website, I wrote about it. Unfortunately, we um, things didn't turn to the positive side,
Oh, shame.
and um, after that, it was kind of a struggle just to get back on track. So at some point, we bought another bus, and we
So did
went
you
again
guys
on the
come
way.
through it okay? Through the accident okay?
Well, there was another traveler with us that she unfortunately passed away a few
Shame.
days after the accident, and it was at that point it was kind of I didn't we didn't really want to know if we weren't we weren't in the situation in the past, and no one has answers to what is the next step.
Hmm.
So it was either one extreme would just go back to Israel and sit in my parents' house and feel sorry for myself, and then all the way till there's a few options on the way, and the most extreme option on the positive side was to buy another bus and get back on the track, and we did so. But it's just
Almost
from
in her honor, because I wouldn't think she would want you. I didn't obviously know her.
right.
I wouldn't imagine if she traveled with you that she wants you guys just sitting and sulking.
Exactly. And I really think that for me, one of the life changing events was that I've decided to power through it versus um, just, becoming the victim of the situation. And up till this day, I think that's one of the things that really changed my mindset on how I deal with issues in life.
Mhm. Now we're going to do a little bit of a jump because we do have time we kind of got to keep an eye on. So you did all these extreme adventures, and then how did you transfer it over to extreme sports?
Well, the funny thing is that a lot of these adventures can't be done locally, and I needed to find a way to fulfill my to get that adrenaline rush. And we used to snowboard. I had many other adventures. We had snowboarding trips in Europe and scuba diving trips in Indonesia. So it was just that those type of extreme sports were at the time what I was very inclined to do. And I first my first skydiving experience was in 2012, where I just decided to do my skydiving license. And since then, it's been a little bit of back and forth. It's really hard to skydive and travel because you need your equipment, and there's a lot of regulations. So once I arrived back to the States after going through a few years of focusing on my business, that's when I've decided to engage in more local extreme sports, skydiving, mountain biking, and I do have these stilts, which the spring-loaded stilts that I run on. I actually started running on them in Australia when I would perform in festivals on them. That's when I noticed that wow, I'm pretty fast on these, and that brought me to think maybe there's something a little bit more to it.
Hmm. So what came of it then?
So I put them aside for a few years, but knowing that I could run really fast on these spring-loaded stilts,
Hmm.
then I looked it up and I saw that there's a world record holder and he did 14.3 for 100 meters. And for me, that just sounded doable. So I timed myself. I was around 17. And I said, if I train, then there's no reason I shouldn't be able to beat him. So later on in 2018 is when had a little bit more time to focus on it. And I hired an Olympic coach. And I went through a 3-month period of training
Wow,
with
that sounds intense.
yeah, it was a great experience. I learned from going from a moderately okay athlete to a world class sprinter in 3 months. I'm definitely not fast enough to run on my legs, but as it stands now on the stilts, I'm the fastest person out there.
Nice. So you kind of we've talked about the different adventures and the entrepreneur portion of you and the extreme sports portion of you. There's one more thing I want to hit, and that's your documentary. Can you tell us
So
about that?
yes, my documentary does revolve around the world record, and I think that the whole project around it, especially when it comes to really, jumping through the hoops and hurdles when it comes to getting an actual Guinness World Record, And I chose to break the world record at Burning Man, which required a lot of logistics and
Wow.
administration around it. So the biocracy wasn't that easy, and the conditions were not easy. And the documentary explores the whole adventure. I went through training. You
Mhm.
know, the first moment that I realized that, I'm this is something I could do, training for it, the adventure on the way to Burning Man, what happened to Burning Man, and then what happened after. So
Now, what's the documentary called?
the documentary is called Bam Bam Runs Fast, a world record at Burning Man.
That sounds cute. And when is that coming out and where?
So actually, it was supposed to come out today on my YouTube channel, but unfortunately, since there's a little bit of things going on back in my home country in Israel, it's not the best time to air
I'm sure.
um,
And
such
I
an
was
event.
really sorry to hear about that. We've been, of course, sharing it through Facebook.
Yeah, so it's just as it stands. For now, we're suspending the launch. Seems like by 1 week. Hopefully, things get better a little bit by then.
Okay,
Uh,
so about the time we are recording this, about a week before I post it. So probably about the time that I post it, it'll be coming
yeah.
on. So what's your YouTube channel?
So my YouTube channel is the Ben Jacoby. So it's TheBenJacoby, and that is my website, thebenjacoby.com. My Instagram is the Ben Jacoby as well, and even my Twitter is.
Awesome, very good. So for people to, they just basically have to keep an eye on your YouTube for that documentary. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I think the best thing would be to subscribe to my channel,
Mhm.
hit the bell button. There's also an option, on my website. If you go in there, you can sign up for my newsletter. In my newsletter, I'll be sending out notifications when any special event is coming out, or if we're preparing for something. And I'd say that's probably the best way to stay in the loop, because between all social media, it gets kind of confusing.
Mhm.
So, but yeah, I'll definitely show on the my YouTube channel, and
And you're
uh,
going to continue to have more adventures too, correct?
right. I even do have a few very, very, very cool videos lined up that I haven't published yet, and very adventurous and entrepreneurial in their way. I
Mhm.
am preparing to actually break another world record at the London Marathon next year,
On your
uh,
stilts?
which would be a full marathon on the
Nice.
stilt.
Wow.
Uh, but it was supposed to happen last year, but then again, everything with COVID. So we're just, with this day and age, we're just waiting for the right time and not forcing anything.
Well, good
So
on you. I'm excited for you. That sounds like you have a lot going on. We have just a few minutes left. Is there anything you would like to add?
so like I said, up till now, for the most part, it is just stay tuned and wait for the documentary. I'd say that I think they'll cover a lot of what I've been working on lately. Um, if you go through my website, you could read a little bit more about my past adventures that we have not mentioned today, or even those that we did mention today. You'd like a little bit more information about that. And that's it. I'd be happy if you guys join me for the journey.
Awesome. Well, those who want to find out more about Ben Jacoby, like I said, Jacoby.
Yes, Jacoby.
Sorry, I mispronounced that. Jacoby. You can find him at www.thebenjacoby.com, but you can also find him on another website, kardocreative.com. And make sure to look him up on YouTube and Instagram and Twitter and all that other fun stuff under the Ben Jacoby. And thank you, Ben, for coming on and sharing, your heart and your adventure and your journey. It sounds like a kick. It sounds like
Yeah.
our heart is with, you and your fellow countrymen, the Israelites right now. Being a Christian, of course, we're standing behind you guys 100%. So know that you guys are in our thoughts and prayers.
Thank you very much, CJ.
No problem. And thank you guys for listening to The Journey is Real. We talk to real people with real passions who share a real portion of their hearts. I'm CJ Peterson of cjpetersonwrites.com. Until next time.